What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, bringing you the latest from Taipei. Taiwan's Coast Guard says one of its vessels came into contact with a Chinese speedboat that capsized, resulting in the death of 2 Chinese fishermen. This incident has caused a spike in tensions across the Taiwan Strait. Rick Laut reports from Kinmen.
It's now been a week since 2 Chinese fishermen died off the coast of these islands of Kinmen after they were chased out of Taiwan's territorial waters by Taiwan's Coast Guard. On Tuesday, the family members of those 2 deceased Chinese fishermen arrived here in Kinmen to perform funeral rites and pick up the remains of their family members. But they also wanted answers surrounding the circumstances of their relatives' death. They have been demanding that Taiwan's Coast Guard release footage of the incident. Today, Taiwan's Coast Guard had to admit that this footage does not exist. Here's what they said.
死者家属的伤痛，我们深切体认，也将全力协助家属处理后续事宜。于家属抵京后，即向家属完整说明相关案情。另案发后，海巡署亦秉持不偏不倚、勿枉勿纵原则，将全案交由司法机关调查。
Taiwan has said it will conduct its own independent investigation into the deaths of those 2 Chinese fishermen, but the incident has already become a major flashpoint in already tense relations between Taipei and Beijing. Here in Kinmen, we are just kilometers off the Chinese coast. You can see the city of Xiamen behind us, and both Taiwan and China have upped their Coast Guard patrols around this region. On Tuesday, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel entered Taiwan's territorial waters and was pushed out by Taiwan's own Coast Guard. Taiwan's premier has urged both sides to remain rational in enforcing their maritime law to avoid further escalating the situation. Karma Xu, Pichi Zhuang and Rick Lauert in Kinmen for TaiwanPlus.
An electronics factory in New Taipei City has gone up in flames. The blaze started on Tuesday evening, and firefighters were able to put out most of it in less than an hour. Smoke from that fire has blanketed neighboring Taipei in smog, and a strong odor has spread throughout the area. The fire department is monitoring the site, since the lithium batteries it produces could still catch fire. COVID cases in Taiwan have reached a 6-month high. Last week, there were 711 cases with 63 deaths, the highest since August. The uptick may be because of travel over the Lunar New Year holiday. Officials are predicting another peak for both COVID and the flu in the coming weeks as students return to school and people gather for the Lantern Festival. Health authorities have announced Taiwan's first local case of measles this year. A man from northern Taiwan is in isolation after being diagnosed with measles last week. Officials are warning people to be on guard while they investigate the source of this infection. Taiwan has reported 4 cases of measles since 2020. Now, most people are vaccinated as children against this virus, which can cause rashes and high fevers. Activists in Taiwan are writing in solidarity with Tibetans, promoting the Tibetan language on International Mother Language Day amid a crackdown by the Chinese government. Tiffany Wong reports.
These activists are cycling throughout Taipei to bring awareness to the Chinese government's suppression of the Tibetan language. The event comes on International Mother Language Day, which aims to promote linguistic diversity around the world. Speaking in front of Taiwan's education ministry in both Tibetan and Mandarin, the activists say China's campaign is an attempt to crush their culture and heritage.
Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! 탑주 덴베 시주톤네 베지 깨다 이게 최다 릭숑 베기 코류 소 삼메 땅다 땅신베 내가 베기 내당데 타다 최 자다다 년장전도 유려봐.
There are over 6 million Tibetans living under repressive conditions in China, and an estimated 1 million Tibetan children are forced to enroll in Mandarin language boarding schools. Human rights groups say this also erases their Tibetan identities. Advocates have been jailed for promoting the language, and Tibetans are worried that their language could die out. They say it's part of a larger crackdown in China on minority languages, which they call a violation of their right to education and to their unique ethnic identities, something they hope to counter by speaking out proudly in their native languages here in Taiwan. Alex Chen and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Australia is set to more than double the number of ships in its Navy.
Right now, the Royal Australian Navy has 11 warships. As a result of the government's response to the Surface Fleet Review, today we are committing to take that number to 26.
Canberra will commit an extra $7 billion to its defense budget for this plan. It's the latest move by Australia to beef up its navy in recent years, following the signing of the AUKUS Defence Pact with the UK and US in 2021. That deal will provide Australia with nuclear submarines. Now, to learn more about Australia's naval revamp, Ed Moon spoke to Matthew Sussex of the Griffith Asia Institute.
Australia has committed to more than doubling the size of its naval surface fleet and spending an extra $7 billion on defence. Can you tell us why it's made that decision? And has Beijing's increasing naval power in the region got anything to do with it?
This is the government responding to a sort of surface fleet review, which came out of the recent Australian DSR, Defence Strategic Review process, which really said that Australia needed to reorient around a maritime and littoral type of defence force, and saying that its current armed forces really weren't fit for purpose. So the reason for this massive upsurge is, of course, fundamentally linked to China, but it's about also addressing a regional environment which I think pretty much everybody can appreciate is becoming quite dangerous, quite complex, and quite fluid. The revamp includes, in fact, downscaling some of the frigates that Australia was going to be buying, the Hunter-class frigate, and going for something, a design that's a bit lighter instead, but capable of carrying, more missiles.
Will Australia's beefed up Navy allow it to work more closely with the United States?
They're fairly interoperable already. It's interesting to note that that the review of the Australian surface fleet was conducted by a former American admiral. So it just goes to show how close those ties are. I think the desire from Canberra is to have as close as possible integration with US warfighting as possible, but also, to some extent, I think as well, having a big enough naval fleet that can stand up, to medium-sized regional scenarios. Whereas, I think in the past, I think one of the criticisms that could be levied at Australia is that it may have talked loudly, but it carried a relatively small stick.
The South China Morning Post recently reported that the US has got 5 carrier fleets operating in the Pacific, which is 2 more than it usually has. Can you tell us why you think the US has decided to beef up its presence in the region?
I think it's designed to send a message to both Beijing, as well as allies and partners, and potentially also to Pyongyang as well. And I think the message to Beijing is, don't forget that we are a very sizable military power, that we have a large number of aircraft carriers, and that we can deploy 5 out of 11 within the Indo-Pacific theatre. Now, the message I think it's attempting to send to allies is one of reassurance, where the United States has been certainly very interested in and actively involved in what's been going on in the Middle East. And with an election year coming up and jitters about the types of commitments that the United States might make to friends and partners.
That was reporter Ed Moon speaking with Matthew Sussex, a defense analyst at the Griffith Asia Institute. Indian farmers are getting ready to march on the country's capital, bringing cranes and diggers to bypass police. Officers stopped protesters at the Punjab-Haryana border, around 200 kilometers from New Delhi. The farmers are demanding loan waivers and a minimum price for their produce. The Indian government is offering guaranteed support prices for certain crops to try and end the clashes. The Farmers Union plans to respond within 2 days.
जो भी होगा, अगर आगुओं को गिरफ्तार करते हैं, उन पे तशद्दुद हटाते हैं, उन पे वक्-वक् दराओं पे पर्चे डालकर उनको अलग-अलग जेलों में भेजते हैं, वो देश के हित में होगा.
Farmers in Poland are using trucks and tractors to block Ukrainian border crossings as the spat over grain imports escalates. Some are even dumping grain onto train tracks to vent their fury. They're angry over duty-free imports of Ukrainian grain, which has caused a sharp drop in local prices. Warsaw has been a staunch supporter of Kyiv in its fight to repel Russia's invasion, but these protests have strained ties.
Szliśmy do ściany. Nie damy już kroku do tyłu, bo nie możemy. I jak dla nas, no to będziemy walczyć o swoje.
Bookworms are gathering in Taipei for the International Book Exhibition, which features the Netherlands this year. Reese Ayers was there.
3, 2, 1, press the button in front of you.
A sea of books and book enthusiasts. The 2024 Taipei International Book Exhibition is underway. More than a chance to catch the hottest novel or meet decorated authors, the event celebrates literature as an important medium in democratic societies.
I think literature is the ultimate way of freedom, actually. It's the freedom to travel, freedom of gender, freedom of expression, freedom of thinking.
There are authors from all over the world at this year's exhibition, with books that explore themes ranging from diversity to the digital world. But the guest of honour and the main theme of the event, greeted by President Tsai Ing-wen herself, the Netherlands.
Taiwan's complex relationship with the Netherlands goes back exactly 400 years, to 1624, when Dutch colonialists ruled over parts of Taiwan for almost half a century.
And that colonial past is something Dutch guests at the event are eager to confront.
Also in the Netherlands and elsewhere in the Western world, people are reassessing colonial history, and we're doing the same in the Netherlands. So I think it's good that we have that opportunity to look at the cross-cultural fertilization that took place, but that we also do introspection in regard to the negative, the shadow sides of our presence here 400 years ago.
Radna Fabius, born on the island of Curaçao, also colonized by the Dutch, writes about colonialism and race issues in her poems. The event was a chance for her to reflect on the parallels between countries that suffered from colonialism in the past.
I think the situation is different in the Caribbean and the relationship is also different, but since it's the same country that arrived around the same time, there will be similarities and there will be things to talk about that will be relevant to both parties.
Dutch author Joyce Bergveld, who spent time in Taiwan as a teenager, was also at the event with her book Lord of Formosa, a dramatization of how Dutch colonists were finally driven out of Taiwan. It's a story she hopes can educate people in the Netherlands about their own past.
In Holland, people hardly knew that we'd ever been in Taiwan with the Dutch East India Company as colonists. And in recent years, there has been more focus on our colonial history, on slavery.
The event is about more than examining the past, though. It's about looking forwards, about how literature can be a link between nations with shared values.
The hope is that we'll meet together with authors and publishers, that we'll learn from each other, and of course we hope that a lot of Dutch literature, which is a very interesting literature, will be translated into Taiwanese, and of course maybe vice versa, so we can learn from each other.
Providing a platform for cultural exchange and reflection for readers and writers alike. This event is the beginning of the next chapter in the two countries' centuries-long story. Klein Wang and Reese Ayers for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwanese baseball player Yu Chang has signed a minor league contract with the Tampa Bay Rays in the U.S. This contract includes an invitation to the Rays spring training, which will give him the chance to compete for a spot on the team's major league roster. Now, apparently 10 teams reportedly offered Chang similar deals, but he chose the Rays, saying that he feels the most comfortable there. Chang played for the Rays in 2022, batting .260 with 3 home runs over 36 game appearances. Thanks for joining us for What's Up Taiwan. Get more of our reports on your mobile device with the TaiwanPlus app. Now, before we go, check out these illuminated runners taking part in a light run during Copenhagen's Light Festival. I'm Eric Gao, and I'll see you again for TaiwanPlus News.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Soaring through a sky where dreams fly, like a star in the night, shining high and bright.
Soaring into the year of the dragon. TaiwanPlus.